Today's content production and streaming power hour topic is getting creative with your existing live streaming equipment. In this power hour, seasoned streaming pros will discuss how they make the most of limited resources. The discussion will be moderated by David Maldow. David is the founder and CEO of Let's Do Video and has been covering the visual collaboration industry and related technologies for over 15 years. And now I'll hand things over to David.
All right. Thank you, Marcella. It's great to be here. If you could bottle this adrenaline that you get from starting a webinar and sell it, you could be so rich. But Marcella already introduced me. I'm David Maldo. You could learn more about me at Let's Do Video. Today, we have an amazing panel. It's all about them. So before I even introduce the topic, let's have the panel introduce themselves. Alphabetical order by first name. Let's start with Erica.
Hi, David. I'm Erica Carroll at Immersive Technologies. I'm the Director of Product Marketing and Training.
Okay, and Mark.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, David. I'm Mark Kolozinski, Associate Director of Academic Technology for Oregon State University, all things streaming, broadcast, and classroom technology design.
And Paul.
Hi, everybody. I'm Paul Richards. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at PTZ Optics. We are a live streaming camera manufacturer.
And Rufina.
Hi, I'm Rufina. I am a software engineer in a company called Blackbird PLC. We are mainly focusing on video editing too.
Excellent. And so I have a quick introduction to the topic. I timed it. I'm going to keep it short because I really want to get back to the panel. And let's bring up our first poll question while I'm introducing the topic. So, okay, there's our poll question. And the topic is getting creative with live streaming equipment. Now, when I'm live streaming, I like to be creative. I have a bunch of little tricks here. I'm in my little car, beep, beep, beep. I'm going for a little ride, and it lightens things up. It makes things fun. I want to be creative because I think of people like this nice lady here who's watching me do my stream. She could be doing a million other things. Now, the content has to be there. I need to know what I'm talking about, but I have a library full of effects and tricks, dramatic zoom, to make things a little bit more fun. I try to keep it appropriate for the situation, but I want to put on a show. I want to make it fun for everyone to be here while we're getting our content. And I want to show off my streaming ability. Like, I love this 3D effect, how I have it skewed here. I want to show off what I can do. But that's software stuff. What we really want to talk about today is getting creative with your equipment. So I have one quick, told you I'm going to keep it quick, example of that, and then we're going to head off to our panel. I had an effect I want to do where I want to show my whole body on screen, and I can't do it because the cameras, they're all wide but not tall. So when I stand up, just get this torso view. So there's all these things I wanted to do. Like, I want to do a Michael Jackson moonwalk. Here we go. Now it's Thriller night, right? It's Thriller. You all remember that. But so how did I do that? I had to get creative. And I popped the top off a second webcam, turned it sideways, and taped it together with all the finesse and skill of a drunken baboon. I mean, look at this thing. This is the first time I've ever showed this. This is embarrassing. This is not, but you know what? I got creative and it did the job and it made it work. And now I'm able to do my effects. So that leads right into our first panelist. Erica, I met you a few weeks ago on another show, and we talked about you living the RV life. I didn't realize you're streaming the RV life. So we have mobility issues, and there's not a lot of space in an RV. So can you tell us about some of the challenges, space and mobility of streaming from an RV?
Streaming from an RV is definitely a challenge because you can't have a dedicated studio. I mean, I suppose you could if you have the space for that, but also living in the RV with that limited space really means that I need to have a portable system, something that I can pull out and put away at the end of the day. And also getting creative with places in the RV where you can sit so that maybe you have a green screen behind you so that it's always a consistent background, or it's not distracting or anything like that. But yeah, for me, it's portability. How much can I take that doesn't have to be set in stone. And that means that I have to leave my studio at home. I have box lights at home. I have, a green screen wall at home. But being mobile has been the biggest challenge to overcome. And for me, it means something like a Sennheiser profile mic, something that is small and portable and, can go with me anywhere and amplifies my sound wherever I'm streaming from.
So basically, you need to create a mobile version of your full studio.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That makes sense. One quick tip that I do, I have my software, my OBS software, set up in a way that it's not really installed on my computer. It's running in what's called if you have in portable mode. So I could put it on a thumb drive, and I can put it on any laptop anywhere in the world and just run it. So portable mode for your software is one way of helping you get mobile, because that way it's the same stream from wherever you are. All right, so let's head into our next panelist. Mark, we all love our gadgets and our tools. I got a bunch set up right here. It's not all duct taped together. Some of it is really nice, actually. But could you tell me some of the streaming tools, the gadgets that you keep close by for your tricky situations?
Yeah, for my tricky situations, a quality microphone and a simple interface, even if it's a small, like Shure style or whatever it may be, XLR to USB, and just a quality mic. Yeah, it doesn't have to be super high expensive microphones. Oftentimes I find that condensers and really, really nice microphones actually make problems worse for folks. So simplified audio paths. One thing that I always try to keep available for different folks is a tool, the software tool, Video.Ninja. I really love that tool for people to be able to capture participants really cleanly, bring them into like an OBS environment, or even just to have a simple collaboration tool from one another, right? You don't have to use Zoom, you don't have to use Teams. You can use Video Ninja for that same kind of thing, and also record those pieces out. Lots of little tips and tricks, small web cameras that you can zoom in and zoom out. They have fixed or variable lenses you can actually use. I think we've all kind of grown accustomed to having all types of USB adapters and widgets that we carry around in our tool bag just to be able to adapt things. And so I think that being able to have those tools at the ready, and also just being able to unpack it and think your way through it, and how all these virtual signals kind of route, and document some of that and keep it in your back pocket.
A few quick thoughts on that. First of all, Video Ninja, I use that. I thought I was the only person who knew about that. It's the first time I've heard it come up in the wild. That is a very okay. It's a little tricky. I'm afraid that people are going to look at it and say, "You're recommending that I use this? This looks a little wonky. This looks like something for a techie to use." It's a little, it's a little wonky, a little techie, but it does. I'm not going to hijack. It does some things that I need to do that nothing else can do the way I want to do them. So let's put it that way. And a point you made at the beginning about the gear. Yeah, I'm using a microphone because it's a good microphone, but it's through an XLR mixer, and it's a whole thing. And sometimes Windows audio is headaches. I'm actually not set up now, but usually I have a good high quality headset at the ready. So if something goes wonky, I can be creative. Bam, pop on my headset. I know it sounds good. I know I can hear through it. So with that, let's go on to that was great, by the way. Let's go into our next question from Paul. Paul and I have been streaming forever. I don't even think it was called Twitch when we were streaming. It was back at Justin TV. Amazingly, for some reason, Paul still looks 23, and I'm turning into Gandalf. I'm not sure what's we're not eating the same foods, obviously, or something. But Paul, you've seen the advancements in streaming platforms. We've both used all of them over the years. How are the advancements, because they're getting better and better and better, enabling professionals like us to optimize our AV solutions when we have when we're having the budget issues and we can't just get everything we want?
Yeah, I am in for that question. Are you talking about the hardware that we're putting in, or is it more about the software platforms? Because you kind of mix those two together.
I guess a little bit of both.
Okay. Well, obviously a lot of people are putting together systems, and their customers are asking them to do amazing things. And many of us are dealing with existing equipment, right? And thinking about how can we add new things to adapt and change. Obviously lighting is important in any scenario. Cameras are important, trying to have video control over those systems. And then long term is managing all of this too. For many of our customers that are thinking about maybe bringing, I think when streaming comes up in a lot of cases, organizations are thinking about, why don't we just pay somebody to do it? Right? Why don't we just pay someone $5,000 to make our commercial? Why don't we just pay someone to come in and live stream our event? Because there's a big leap from, paying someone and having to do kind of nothing, just tell them what they want, to actually installing and integrating this equipment into a space and training internally, bringing that, almost that burden, right, in-house, and say, how are we going to bring this in-house? Now, for folks like Mark, who, their job is to manage all of these spaces on behalf of their organization, even at that level, I'm sure, Mark, you're looking for devices that you can remotely manage, and for devices where you can update the firmware remotely, and that have management platforms and solutions that are cloud-based, or at least available over the network. So there's been a huge shift. And I think a lot of manufacturers have been listening to their customers and understanding, how can we, because we've all over the past couple of years went from, a couple of our classrooms can do distance learning to every single classroom has to be able to do lecture capture. Every single space has to be able to have some resources for video communications. So in that spectrum, we have, people who are thinking about taking video production in-house on a small scale. We have people in kind of in the middle who are saying, we're going to do a whole live streaming studio. And then we have on, the enterprise university side where, they're managing lots and lots of devices. How do we make this work? How could we possibly scale at the level that we need to, because the demand is so high? So I don't want to talk forever. So there's a lot there in that to unpack in that question. But a lot of devices are getting easier to use. Many, many more devices are power over Ethernet. Many, many more devices can be remotely managed, and all kinds of services are offering cloud-based deployments and dashboards to make this all happen and make it possible to manage all of that.
Yep, and these tools are great for the do-it-yourselfers and great for those of us on the professional side who are doing streams for others. Could we get the results from the first poll, Marcella? Let's see what people said. Oh, we got a good mix here. We have a lot of people, almost a majority, almost half the people have been doing streaming for a while. So we have some experience in chat. We're going to have to ask the chat for some answers here. And another 15% are very experienced. So it's a minority that are just getting started. We have almost 40% just getting started. So a good mix. As long as we're doing polls, let's bring up the second poll. And we have a question. Let's share this with the panel now. Do we have any advice on situations where we're trying to broadcast on a customer's integrated AV space while using their equipment to save money? Yeah, I've actually done that. I brought in my battle station, so my powerful laptop with my software on it and everything, but connected to, and it's not like it just docks in. Okay, it is not like it just docks in, but try to connect to their cameras, their camera mixer, their audio, and yes, it is doable. But set up early and do more test streams than you would usually do. Don't just go in on the day and just think it's going to work. There were unexpected headaches, but it did work. And at the end, we had the value of their location, their setup, their high quality cameras, and me being able to, or my team being able to run it the way we do. Anyone else on the panel have experience with that sort of a setup? No one wants to jump in. All right, let's we can head to the next.
We get those requests. We get those requests on campus. People may have a classroom. Maybe that's the spirit of the question. If you're in a classroom and kind of how are you creating an event out of a classroom space that may have codecs or maybe just capture technology? I think the relationship with that organization, do you have access? Can you even go into the rack to even make a modify or as you're kind of saying, hijacking those signal paths to kind of create your own splitter? If you can, that's kind of a luxury. But I know most places, they're not going to let you into that rack to go in there and start unplugging things. But I think that's where you start to get kind of clever, right? Whether you're using that existing infrastructure and then tying that in, like creating your own, whether it be Zoom, Teams, or even OBS, kind of using those software tools to kind of connect to a session outside of that, and then kind of cropping using OBS, using Video Ninja and the like to kind of create that experience. So you're not just in the Zoom or Teams space, kind of leveraging it as your front end, but not connecting to that service, maybe going to an alternate service and being more comfortable with those virtual tools to kind of create and tailor your own stream. We've done that a couple of different ways with, our cameras and our systems here on campus as well. So
that's exactly what we're talking about. It's from what you described. It's the kind of thing where, yeah, we can make it work, but it's not like, okay, yeah, this is our off the shelf solution A1 that we use for everyone. Like it's okay. We got to figure this out. It's going to be a custom thing. We're gonna have to get creative, which is what we're talking about here. But I think that's I've been talking about how we've been streaming forever, but we're still in the early days of a lot of this. A lot of what we're doing, and those of you watching, I'm certain are doing, is being creative with us. So let's head on to our next question for Rufina. We're going to talk about the advantage of cloud-based video editing. Yeah, because I got to tell you, when I'm editing with my team, sharing those large files back and forth, it's a lot. It slows down the process. So is there really such a thing as, first of all, is there such a thing as cloud-based video editing?
Yeah, actually there's a thing, and well, that's our main product basically. So I think advantage of cloud-based editing is also something Paul just mentioned. You can have remote access. It can be very flexible. You can access it anywhere as long as you've got internet. It's like Google Documents, like you have internet, you can just edit the file. At the same concept, you have internet, you can edit the video. Another good thing you just mentioned is always a problem, like you transfer big files. We're talking about gigabytes, terabytes of videos. And a good thing about cloud-based editing is you just upload the video clip from your end, and then your team can all access it as long as they have account to log in to use to. So it's about flexibility and also about scalability. So you don't need to buy like a bunch of servers to keep your videos, but you just keep it all in a cloud-based storage. And it actually brings to another good thing is that it lowers the cost. So we actually did a research. So we found that it actually reduced up to 75% of the cost in infrastructure, because we're talking about you don't need to buy your own server, build your own server, you don't need to build your own network to maintain and to add it within your team. So it's actually a cost-effective solution in another way.
Nice. When we're being creative and we're especially going on locations and dealing with remote teams, which we're dealing with a lot, we have to be open to trying different solutions, whether it's cloud video editing or something like Video Ninja that we're talking before. We're not always going to be using the default Microsoft solution for everything. We're going to be trying new and different tools. We have a couple of questions in the Q&A. One, this is a great question. If I'm an anonymous attendee, any advice on content production for churches with low budgets for in-house stream? Yes, absolutely. And there's so many different ways to say this, but the one way I'd say it is lower your expectations at first. If you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see that my current videos, I have this nice microphone, my voice sounds good, my lighting is good, I'm properly framed. Go back a year, I don't sound so good. Go back another year. My camera's a little low resolution. Go back another year, I don't have as good lighting. Go back another year, I'm a little more awkward about, well, I'm still a little awkward, but I'm more awkward about what I'm saying. So just be okay with what you have, and hopefully it's more than just a laptop, because laptop webcams are kind of not so good usually. Maybe a laptop with a webcam on top of it. Start with what you have, and you make your roadmap, and maybe your first fundraiser is for better lighting, and then you could do something for a better microphone and work your way up. But I guess another way to say it, my advice would be see it as a journey, and not as, okay, we got to spend $15,000 before we could do anything. Anyone else on the panel want to?
Yeah, I want to jump in here too. So we did this for a couple of the churches that I have attended also, where you literally just have to look at what you want to accomplish first, and then look at the equipment that's available. And sometimes that means getting something like a simple switching system, like an ATEM, which can be completely virtualized and run on a computer. And you get all kinds of switching capabilities and streaming capabilities along with that too. So there's different ways to look at it, but I would say definitely just start with the basic requirements and see how much you can get done with as little as possible.
The ATEM stuff is cool. It's like,
It is.
oh, it's like when that comes, it's like Christmas. Oh, look, let me play with the buttons. Let me press the buttons. Um,
You
we
know,
have
one thing I
another.
can
I'm sorry,
add
go ahead.
for houses of worship is that most houses of worship that I've worked with have a pretty good audio system already. It might have been put in the 80s, right, or the 90s, but in generally there is a pretty good audio system in place. And so I don't know how far along you are, but one of the first things that a lot of churches will do is connect that audio system, take the output of it, and get a very affordable, basically like XLR or quarter-inch audio to USB. It's called a USB capture device. And essentially you can just like capture the audio. And so you probably already have pretty decent audio in the space that you can capture. And then just adding video is, the second step, which could be a webcam. Sometimes houses of worship are large spaces. So getting a PTZ camera is usually a good option. That's one of our top customers, so that you can like zoom in from far away. But you may not realize that you don't have to reinvent the audio. You probably already have an audio system that you can very simply connect to a computer for your live stream.
The benefit of a
That's
PTZ
a great
cam in
point.
that situation is also presets. So if you always know where somebody is going to be standing or singing, or spatially within that house of worship, then presets, again, make it as virtual and easy as possible. Press a button. You don't need a person to sit there and zoom in.
Yeah, no, that's important because you get a lot of times the people who are going to be running these things are volunteers. And it's not going to be one person who owns it and loves it and plays with it all day and knows what all the buttons do. It's someone who does it every other Sunday. So it's got to be easy for them. Someone has to be the master of it and set it up. But not everyone's going to be a video director and want to control all the controls. They're just going to want some simple presets. Another question from I'm loving the Q&A. Here's the result of our poll. The focus of our streaming products. Wow, it's right down the mix. A third are doing it for yourselves or for your own company. So we have a lot of streamers out there. That's awesome. Love streaming. A third doing it for your clients, and a third doing it for both. It's perfect. Everyone's streaming. Well, everyone attending the webinar on streaming is streaming. That kind of makes sense. Lloyd has a question. Do we regularly stream via something like YouTube or use an encoder like Matrox? I personally use OBS as my streaming software, and from OBS stream to Twitch or YouTube primarily. There's a service called Restream, which is really cool because you could just push to Restream from OBS, whatever, and then Restream can push to everything. So you could stream on, I don't know, Instagram and YouTube and Twitch and everything all at once. Anyone else want to mention any platforms that I didn't mention or software I didn't mention?
Yeah, I think it depends on your application. I used to use StreamYard, which was really easy to get people to join into your stream, and then you can go out to other platforms.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, we use StreamYard for our podcast, same thing. It's really powerful. But I think you're absolutely right in saying it's kind of dependent upon what you're doing. If I'm going to do a broadcast, like a real broadcast for whatever it's going to be, and not just kind of desktop streaming, I'm going to leverage an encoder, right? I'm going to have an encoder in a rack downstream in my broadcast center. I'm going to send that to a CDN. It's going to replicate and deliver where we want to go. It could be something like that. I've often even used the encoders built right into cameras, right? Use an embedded audio signal, put that right in that camera feed and stream directly from that. A lot of camera manufacturers will kind of give you that capability to point towards wherever you want to send it to now. So it's kind of specific to the situation, but everything's fair game.
Yep, we have a lot of options. Another question, I'm seeing some stuff in the chat. I'll get to that as well. John Villa, great question. Are many content creators using multiple PTZ cameras? Yes, because what happens is we have our starter camera and then we get a good camera and the starter camera is still good, right? It's 720 at least. So we want to use it for something. We're not going to throw it away. So we get a different camera angle. And then we think, 2 camera angles is fun. It'd be really fun. A third camera angle. So it is a slippery slope. And part of it is that the leap from 1 camera to 2 camera is not a leap. There's nothing to it. It's not like, oh, I figured out 1 camera. Now I have to watch a bunch of YouTube videos and be an expert on another level. No, you plug in the second camera and use it in the software. It's really easy. Anyone else on multiple cameras?
Yeah, I think just echoing the same.
Sorry, go ahead.
Of it, just jumping into getting a second camera. You start with a static camera, and then sometimes a PTZ camera is an awesome second choice. I don't know that I would have more than one PTZ camera depending on the application, but definitely having it in the studio is worth it.
One of the things I'll mention is that there actually is sometimes there's a law of diminishing returns, right? Like 3 cameras are better than 2, and 4 cameras are better than 3, and 5 cameras are better than 4. But at a certain point, there's you diminishing in your return. But what I will say is that there's a massive difference between 1 camera and 2. And why is that? Because now you can suddenly do transitions. So, and especially even if you have just 1 webcam or 1 wide angle and you've got your PTZ, what you can do on that second camera with, as you mentioned, Erica, with the PTZ, you can zoom into a specific place, cut to your second wide angle. Now you can move the PTZ camera wherever you want and transition to it. And magically, you're getting all these different shots, even with just 2 cameras. So there is a big difference. So going to the second camera is huge. Now, I will say that a lot of people have trouble getting 3, 4 cameras, especially if you have customers who want to do 4K, which we have all our new line is 4K. And 4K takes a lot of computer processing power. It takes a lot of bandwidth, and it's a whole new ball game. So if you're not ready for 4K, you might not want to go there quite yet, unless you have a really powerful computer. But even with 1080p, even if you have like 2 USB 1080p cameras, sometimes people can have issues using the same USB bus. So getting to that second and third camera, you might come into issues. And I always recommend using capture cards to deal with the bandwidth that's necessary. So when you get into the multi-camera stuff, it is nice to have an A10 Mini, as you mentioned, that does a lot of the processing before it goes to your computer, right? So an A10 Mini will give you 4 HDMI video sources, but the bandwidth required for your computer is just 1 USB connection. So when you get into the multi-camera world, you need to know what you're doing, but obviously there's a lot of great ways to do it. You just need to think about how you're going to set up your system.
To add to that, Paul, I think even simple things, before I would go and invest in another PTZ camera or whatever, if you have 1 camera, if it is PTZ or has presets capable, a capture card, like you mentioned, being able to have an isolated content feed in to be able to switch away from and then change your preset, you can build a pretty dynamic show with 1 camera and just an isolated content stream from a secondary laptop or whatever that may be.
One more quick. We're gonna get to all the Q&A. I want to do one more Q&A and then get back to our panelist questions, kind of mixing them up. This is a question from Percival. Is using one solution preferred and sticking to that proprietary protocol, or is it better to mix and match? That in the old days, I would say no. Get everything from one company because all their stuff works together well. You get everything from Polycom. It's not even called Polycom anymore. Get everything from Polycom, it'll all work with other Polycom stuff. Get everything from Cisco, it'll all work with all Cisco stuff or whatever. Now everything works with everything. Everything is USB. Everything talks to each other. We've been doing this stuff for a while, and even the competitors have agreed on a lot of things. So if you're like, oh, I really like this one company's microphone, and I really love this other company's camera, get the microphone you want, get the camera you want. It'll be fine. And let's go back to our panelist questions. Rufina, can you talk to us about attracting audience attention? That's, I mentioned at the beginning of this, I want this to be informative, and we've had some great information here, but I want it to be fun. I want to do some things to make sure people are enjoying this. So can you talk a little bit how we attract audience attention with our live streams?
Yeah, I think one thing we found is that it's quite fun or attractive when you do like recap at the same time, or even like when you have multi cameras and then you want to chip in another shot or in the clips that you got from the other camera. So you can add it and clip it or like edit a clip and publish it back to the stream immediately when you're during your live streaming. So this kind of attracts the audience attention, and it's particularly important in events like live sports events like football matches, or like nowadays gaming contest streaming like Championship of League of Legends. Like you can always do the recapturing and let the user know, oh, actually what's happened just now, I missed it maybe. And another good thing is that you can clip it and then you can immediately export it to your own promotional platforms. For example, if you have an OTT applications, you can immediately publish it, or even social platforms. You can just upload it to social platforms, and then nowadays people will just share, repost, whatever it calls, and then to spread the news over, and then you attract more audience to join your event.
I guess basically we're treating a stream like a live broadcast instead of just, oh, meet with me on Zoom, we'll record it, and then later we'll put it in production. If you're doing the production as you're streaming, then it just goes right to YouTube, and we're ready to go.
Yep.
Next question. We still have time for more questions. This is I'm having fun. For Erica, and I know back to the RV. Do you have any fun stories about some technical challenges you've encountered when streaming from unique or unconventional locations? And how'd you get it to work?
So I think the biggest challenge streaming from an RV is internet, and being able to have that connectivity. So ultimately, when it comes down to it, we probably have more internet than anybody should ever need. But in the RV specifically, we had two hotspots, from different networks. And so when one hotspot doesn't work, you definitely want to have a backup hotspot on a completely different network. And more recently, now we also have Starlink, which has been amazing for the RV. But when Starlink is not available, and when I say not available, if you're in a wooded area and it can't see the sky, or if there's a lot of clouds, then your bandwidth might go down. But having multiple networks has been the biggest lifesaver for me. And even outside of the RV, now we live in the mountains when we are home half the time, and we have more internet than we need there too, right? We have Starlink as the backup in that case, and then we have all the normal home internet. We have fiber at home, but always having a backup, I think, is the biggest takeaway there.
See, if you know what you're doing, you can make things work. You probably have better connectivity in the RV than I have in this apartment. Yeah, they gave me fiber here, so I'm like, oh, I have fiber. I have nothing to worry about anymore because it's a lot of bandwidth. I can download things fast, but once or twice a week it goes out for 2 minutes, and it could happen right now. And I don't have a backup. My backup is I'll come back in and say, hey, sorry, everyone, that's part of live streaming. That happens. You got to be able to deal with it. That's part of being creative. But maybe I should get a backup. I'm looking at the panel and kind of nodding at me. Our next question for Mark. This is a good one. There's been so many recent, this industry has not been boring to cover, but what is one recent industry change trend that has changed the way that you manage your streaming events?
I may lump this with one of those anonymous questions in there as well, like that, because you mentioned SRT. I think SRT and that type of protocol stuff coming to the market has changed the way I'm looking at events, my infrastructure, kind of what my capabilities are for campus. We are pretty wide-reaching campus. We have sites all over the state. Being able to produce events from anywhere now, and not just tied to my layer 1 video infrastructure that I have here on this campus, but leveraging SRT is a quick way to get capability everywhere. And I look at it, it may be a shoulder technology for us, but it's allowed us to think outside the box and kind of bring in elements and cameras and sites from all over the state and all over the world, for that matter, into our production environments, and kind of stop thinking about where do I have video spigots, where do I have audio lines, and just kind of completely change the way we view as contribution sites. And we are kind of looking at this, and it seems to be spreading pretty rapidly here for us at our university. And I think it will continue to spread. And I think just things like that, simplifying kind of how we can bring elements into our environments, has just been a huge, I don't want to say disruptor, but a good disruptor in a weird way, that it's changed kind of, it made things more cost effective for us to have production capability.
Our audience is keyed into this webinar. The questions from our anonymous attendee, raised up the answer to our panelist questions. That was really great. Let's get our next question for Paul. Oh, this is a fun one. Okay, so my wish list, my dream list for my home studio is $10,000, $15,000, maybe $20,000 worth of gear. Let's say I'm gonna indulge myself and spend, $1,000 or $2,000 in the next few years. So, and especially with everything changing so quickly, how can professionals discern between essential components, things I need for streaming, and things that are a luxury or non-essential? I mean, my Stream Deck, is that essential? It feels kind of essential. Is it a luxury? So how do we, and especially when we're dealing with a budget, how do we know what's essential and what's a luxury?
That's a great question. And I do think that there are like levels to this question, where every studio that I've worked with, almost every in video production spaces, people are very passionate about. And so oftentimes it's a never ending cycle of slowly upgrading things. So at the very essentials is like, people need to be heard and feel comfortable. And sometimes I do think like an essential that's overlooked is like the background, the space itself. Are the people that you plan to be in this space comfortable? And I imagine that's usually part of it. So you've got a comfortable space, you're feeling good about the way it's gonna look on camera. Assuming that everyone is going to be heard correctly, you can start adding cameras. But essential backbone infrastructure at this point is definitely leaning toward networking, right? And when you have a budget and you're putting something in, you do want to plan for the future a little bit. You probably want to think about how you're going to be connecting things up front. I would think like in 2 or 3 stages before you start buying things. Like stage 1 is going to be cap, but here's where we eventually want to go, because at a certain point you're going to be asked questions, do you get an 8-port network switch, or are you going to get a 24? Or are you going to get a 40-port? Like, where are you going with this in the beginning, so that you don't make a decision that's going to limit you fairly early on. So I would recommend that definitely comes down, is this going to be a hardware based system where it's going to be like rock solid and a Windows update's not going to take your system down? Or do you want to have the flexibility of vMix or OBS, and do you want to have it all on your home computer, or however you're doing this? So there's definitely some forks in the road that you can take, and some options right up front that you should be considering. So I hope that answers the question. But I think a lot of people start at like a stage 1 and they want to be at a stage 3, and that's totally fine. I've seen that happen every single time. Every customer we work with starts with 1 or 2 cameras and ends up with 4. We did a survey and the average is actually 3 of our customer base. And we have almost 200,000 customers. So that's a pretty big base to be questioning. A lot of people start with 1, add the 2 because it's so great. And then as they start to say, oh my gosh, like this is attracting, like in a church, for example, this is attracting younger people. They like to operate the joystick. This is also accommodating older people who are at retirement homes who can't make it to church on Sunday, right? So like there's this huge gamut of people. The awesome thing about live streaming is that people, hundreds of thousands, depend, maybe millions of people will recognize your work, right? Whether it's just a classroom of students or a small gathering of people, or literally millions of people will see this, right? And so they're like, wow, that extra camera angle was cool. Could you do a behind the scenes camera? Can we get a backstage camera? So these things do naturally grow, and people foundationally, people are going to see this video, right? People are going to hear this audio. So as you improve over time, people are going to recognize it. And I think that does set like a motivation to be like, oh, we got to raise the bar a little more. I want to add social media comments. I can't do that, very easily with this tool. I got to change my tool. So I would say at a foundational level, yes, got to be heard correctly. You got to light the stage properly. The people have to feel comfortable in the space that they're in. Obviously, you need a decent camera to capture the video at a certain level. But what you'll find is at a certain level, once you got your audience and people are like, I like this, I'm enjoying this, or I have to watch this because it's part of school, but I enjoy and appreciate how much work went into this. Slowly, you'll probably challenge yourself and be motivated to continue that path to level 2 and level 3 and level 100, because it really never ends, I don't think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the real answer, is that it's a journey, and you're going to keep wanting to get better. You get that good microphone finally, and people start giving you compliments on how you sound, and you say, maybe I should get better lighting so that my skin tone looks a little more correct. You want to be a little better as you get, as you get that positive feedback. So maybe I want another camera angle. And you made a good point that there are forks you could make, and you want to try to avoid that. You don't want to, you don't want to build walls that later you're going to have to knock down, and you have to be forgiving if you do. At one point, I have this microphone on a boom arm connected to my desk. At one point, I thought I needed a microphone stand, so when I do the moonwalking, I can have it. It didn't work for me. I kept tripping over it. It was in the way, but I spent $50 on it, so I didn't want to throw it away. So for like a year and a half, I'm trying to make this microphone stand work when it wasn't. It was a wrong fork. Talked about forks. You got to be able to back up and say, you know what, let's take the right fork at this point. Let's go the way we need to go. A question from Shane Fury. A lot of spaces have been requesting speaker tracking. Crestron has the Hawk that does up to 3 cameras. Wondering if there's more affordable solutions out there. This is a little off topic because that's more about meetings than about streaming, but it's kind of more role. So very briefly, Zoom and Microsoft Teams are doing that in the software now. So it's kind of redundant. There's a lot of cameras out there to do it. MaxHub, Aver, Logitech, Poly. So there's a lot of other solutions out there. But what I would do is decide which software you're going to use. Are you doing Zoom meetings? Are you doing Teams meetings? Are you doing WebEx meetings? From there, go to that company and get something that they recommend that has the speaker tracking in it. Next question from Jake. What are some network optimization tips, tricks that you could offer you're concerned about a client's infrastructure? Network, I just kind of cross my fingers and hope. Any of y'all on the panel can speak more to network than me? We know to be redundant.
If you can, bring your own, right? Bring your own network. It sounds kind of funny, but we have 5G hotspots and things like that we've used if we're kind of in a space that doesn't have capability. It obviously will change the way your network infrastructure on-prem may interact and work or be compatible with that. But if we're going to stream from a site and we don't have a dedicated, reliable network, we have leveraged pieces with just 5G uplinks and things like that, and different simple things like cell phones. We've done that in the past as well. So there is a way. There's not a lot you can do to clear up somebody else's network. And the first job of their network admin is to keep you off of that network. So there's not much modification you're going to actually do to that network when you're rolling in.
Yeah,
Again,
I would agree
being
with
creative.
that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Erica.
I was going to say that I agree. If you can bring your network, that would be cool. If you can create a dedicated network, if this is something that they are adopting as a company and it's important to them, then they should have a dedicated network with little chatter and an open bandwidth for when streaming does occur.
If it is your network, if it's your network, you can set up a VLAN and you can, really take advantage of the space. A lot of people are bringing their own PoE network switches to their live streaming setup. So that way they can power their cameras, they can power different devices and decoders and encoders. Maybe it's more complicated setups will have like a lot of Ethernet setups. So they'll bring their own networking switch. I was just at IBC recently, and Netgear has some really great M4250 switches that, one of the things that will happen is if you're on somebody else's network, you don't know what's going on. There could be Dante sources colliding packets with NDI sources and all kinds of things. So the first thing I like to do if I am going to use someone else's network is plug in my computer and see what IP address I've got. And you should learn how to do that if you don't know how, just because most likely their network is set up with DHCP. So it's like, okay, what IP address am I getting from this network? And does it have internet? And then run a speed test if you are going to use someone else's network and see how reliable that speed test is. And then if you are going to use their network and they are giving out DHCP, then you're going to want to take all the devices that you are going to use on their network. I'm assuming you have a couple different devices and set those IP addresses to be on the same range as the network that you're planning on using.
Nice.
I'd
That's
say that
great advice.
it'd be I would be, I don't know, it'd be an interesting environment if you could walk into any enterprise and just plug in your wired device and actually just go and get network. Most enterprises, DHCP is reserved and all that MAC addressing and stuff's going to be done for you on the back end. Moral of the story is reach out to your network admins if you're going somewhere and have a conversation with them, because they are going to kind of be the enabler of your event to have any level of success.
Test streams.
Yeah, I know actually there are quite a lot of enterprises when if they have brought streaming servers or they have live streaming on their own, they will actually have a dedicated network which like forbids their staff to use it just to make sure when it's used it's all clear.
I have a question for chat. Everyone in chat, if you could just we're not going to do a poll, just type in your answer. What are your goals for streaming in terms of sophistication of the production? Are you okay with just having a Microsoft Teams meeting and seeing the Microsoft Teams background and putting that on YouTube? Or, are you looking to do some fancy backgrounds or do a whole show? Or, what is your goal in terms of the production value of your stream?
David, that kind of leads into Anonymous's question about recommended virtual backgrounds.
Yeah, perfect. Go ahead, Erica. You wanna?
Sure. So obviously, if you can do your own background, that would be ideal. I'm going to throw one out there that a lot of people typically don't know about. It's called MMHMM. And it's a virtual studio that you can run on your computer, and it presents itself as a webcam as well and brings it into your own stream. And you can completely customize it and, be on screen with your presentation or any number of extra effects in that case. But it's an excellent resource. I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, I've played around with. I'm using OBS, and I can switch my background. This is my normal background. I have my logo up there. You saw the tricks I was doing before. But OBS takes a while to learn. I have actually some tutorials up on the web on how to do certain things with it. It's a lot for most people, and is very, very easy. It doesn't do everything OBS does, but most people don't need to do everything OBS does. You could learn in a few minutes. It's a cute name for a company.
It's fun watching their videos too, because they throw in there multiple times, and it's just funny to follow.
But Zoom and Teams, they have their inherent virtual background support. You could be in a Zoom meeting and click a button and put it up, and they have some default ones in there that are cute beach background and office background. But you could always just go to Google and search for free use, no copyright, please don't sue me, images for Zoom backgrounds. And be careful with what you use. Yeah, you could use whatever you want. We have some more questions in the chat. We still have time, right? Okay. There's a question from Bennett. Working with several camera endpoints is great and scaling is relatively simple. How do you scale multiple endpoints in the same manner? Oh, yeah. Adjustments with mixing speakers can be challenging. Can softwares like OBS make this more manageable? Oh, the trickiest thing in the world is Windows audio. I'm tempted to make a video about how many different places you got to go. You got to go to a completely different place to set this, and then you think it's all set, but no, there's another menu over here. OBS it does a decent job of audio, but it's still working with Windows audio. It's the reality is it's challenging. The reality is sometimes you're like, why isn't this working? Why is no one hearing me? Why is no sound coming out of the speaker? You got to play with it. You gotta Google, why isn't this working? I could get things generally when everyone's in different locations. If I'm doing a production and people are in different parts of the world and I'm bringing them in to make it look like they're sitting next to me, I could handle all their audio because each audio is from a different source. If there's multiple people in the same room, then it really gets tricky. You have to have a good audio solution that knows not to echo it and whatnot. Anyone else want to jump in on audio?
It's extremely important. I'd say if we're in the spirit of this question, I think if I'm going to be in a space that has multiple speakers, I'm not sure if that's referring to physical speakers amplifying or people speaking. But at a certain point, I'm probably not going to try to manage that from a software. I'm going to go to the outboard hardware to kind of manage those zones more effectively, and then convert that last mile to my PC and then stream that way, and kind of mix the local show first, and then kind of create a mix that's going to go into my streaming appliance.
Yeah, there are software mixers, something called a voice meter, which is nice. I've played with it. For real work, I still want a physical audio mixer. I wish I could say the opposite, because I like everything to be virtualized. I'd love to say, oh, virtual audio mixers, it's all you need, but no, you still need a physical mixer for a lot of stuff. Any thoughts on shot boxes for saved and repeatable multi-PTZ moves and transitions? Anybody? I know what a shot box is.
I think what that refers to is basically when you're working with a more complicated production and you have 4 or 5 panelists, and those are technically the shot boxes. And they have borders around them, and you can kind of, and so I'm a vMix user, and that is kind of one of the most popular softwares for managing those more complicated setups where you have that. You can do that in OBS. It just takes a lot more time, but essentially it's like a box where you've got like borders around it, and if you hit a merge function, it might take the speaker and put them in the left, and then have like the PowerPoint on the right, and then you hit the merge function again, and then now there's like 6 people on stage. So that's my understanding of the shot boxes. And the merge function is a popular one for that, because it like intelligently, instead of just like cutting from one to the next, will actually like beautifully transition it from one space to the next if you've got the same boxes. And essentially what's happening here is there's a preview and there's an output, right? So output is what you're streaming and recording, and preview is what you're like setting up and getting ready to merge and transition into. And essentially, you can do a cut. Cuts, by the way, a cut is the most natural, most popular form of transitioning between content, right? It's like the blink happens in the blink of an eye. It's like, it's just so natural. Boom, boom, boom. You should if you can, you should probably avoid all these like fancy fades and crossfades and transitions. In fact, a crossfade is only really used very rarely in television production. So even though, here's what I'll say, like when you get these powerful production tools, you might be fun to use every feature and have stinger effects where there's graphics and everything. But if you watch, really well done productions and broadcasts, they actually use the cut feature way more often than all of these fancy transitions.
Yeah, I must have 1,000 transitions in OBS, and I use the silly ones for my guitar stream because I'm trying to be silly and funny there. But for this kind of streaming, I use the cut, and I use a simple 2-second fade, not a crossfade, just a 2-second soft fade. And I don't use the other 9,990 because they're just too much. But the shot boxes thing, that is a great way to do a stream that looks very professional, and it's very easy to do. It used to be hard to do because you used to have to use software like OBS, but there's so much software. I think might do something like it. And Zoom just came out with Zoom Studio, I think they're calling it. I don't know if I don't think it's for meetings. I think it's for Zoom webinars, but it's going to basically give shot boxes, what I understand it based on Paul's description, which is great. Now, just by using Zoom without using anything else, you can put people in boxes and merge them together and all that cool stuff. And it adds a lot of production value, and it doesn't require a lot of learning. So I'm a big fan of that. A few more connections. Another network question. I feel like we're gonna have the same answer. Someone wants to stream the high school sporting event in the gym, and school performances in the auditorium. There's no wired internet at either location. Is there any way to maintain a stable connection? Yeah, it's all the things we've already said. It's just do a bunch of tests and hope for the best. And if you can't, you can't. We can't invent internet where it's not there.
Well, there's a couple of things you can do actually. One is obviously you have Ethernet, hopefully, right? But Ethernet is not the only way to get network connectivity. You can use Wi-Fi, and then you can also have cellular connections, and you can actually bond all 3 of those together. So if you've got an Ethernet, but you're not sure, you're worried it might go out, and there is Wi-Fi, but it's not quite as good, you can use, there's a software called Speedify, and they have a monthly
Nice.
subscription, Speedify, and that one will bond. You can even do a hotspot from your phone, right? So you can bond multiple connections together to create a more stable and reliable network connection. Even if you've only got a couple bars of 3G or 4G, it's an important event. It might be worth looking into Speedify or getting an encoder like a LiveView Solo that can do those. It's usually those three things, right? Cellular, Wi-Fi, and Ethernet. Those are the three options we usually have. And if you've got even just two of those, bonding them together will give you a more reliable signal.
Yeah, so take everything you can get. Basically, you take everything you can get and try to put them all together. I guess this might be we're have 2 or 3 more minutes. This is a great question from Jake. Stepping away from the technical stuff for a minute, how do you go making virtual in-person talent comfortable pre-show? I do a lot of podcasts. I know Paul does a lot of podcasting with guests, and with live streaming, it's hard. You could tell people this is by being relaxed yourself, they'll get the relaxed vibe off of you. And if you've been doing this for a while, you'll be relaxed. Recording is a lot easier because you tell them, look, if you make a mistake, I'm going to edit it out. And you can even make mistakes when you start out. Okay, let's start our stream. Hi, I'm David Mouse. Let me do that again. Oh, I always do that, and that sets them at ease. That's what's going to happen if you make a mistake. Let them know it's okay. Relax. Yeah, basically, I think if I'm not stressed, my guests are usually not stressed. Anyone else?
I feel the same way. So I do a lot of webinars and podcasts, and the Women in AV. We have a lot of people who aren't necessarily used to being live or even recorded sometimes, because they want the flow just to keep going. And the biggest success that we've had, so I have like a talent checklist that we make sure and we see, your audio is good, your lighting is good, your video stream is of good quality, your framing is good. And then we have an hour just to chat, just to loosen up a little. And I usually open it up to an hour before every event. So if I have multiple panelists, if they're more comfortable, they can come in 15 minutes before, but just to start a conversation so that they feel natural talking to you first before they actually have to hit record or go live.
Yeah, Marcella met with us a few times before we did this.
Yeah.
Before we did this today. So all right. Let me see. Anyone deal with streaming in the court system? So I used to be an attorney in a previous life before streaming was a thing. That's how old I am.
We just finished doing the New York court system, and I won't explain the thing. We did post a webinar or a case study about it. They went all NDI. And it was really incredible how much money they were able to save by doing everything over IP. And just quickly, they had a couple NDI cameras for every person in the jury. They all needed to see the evidence really close up. So there was 8 NDI decoders. Actually, there was more like 12 because there was 2 big monitors, and then the judge wanted a NDI decoder. There was NDI encoders, and they even had a network switch for every single courtroom. So when the day was over, they turned the network switch off, and they found that they saved electricity, and all those devices don't create heat, so the air conditioning bill was lower. But literally, and that's just kind of a funny aside, but to do things with HDMI matrix switchers, those days are kind of over, I really believe. And some of the stuff that was originally designed for streaming and broadcast has really big implications for reducing costs and making things more affordable and reliable. I mean, in a courtroom, we're not talking about needing it to be television quality here. It's like, can you see the video in front of you? So that was a really interesting project that was pretty much all PoE, all NDI network system in the courtroom that was really exciting to be a part of.
That'd make a great case study. I hope that answers your question, anonymous attendee. That was great. We have 1 minute left and one more question. Best advice for recording primarily multi-track audio, remote podcast recording, but video is necessary for a more natural conversation. Product recommendations. If you're talking about getting multiple people together, that Video Ninja that we mentioned before is a great way to pull people in and be able to use their their stream individually in your software. I'm not sure if that answers the question. Anyone else have any thoughts on that?
I think at a very basic level, Zoom does this. When you go into your recording settings, you can record each attendee independently. And also, so for my podcast, we use riverside.fm. So everybody's individual stream is recorded and then put together in post.
Riverside's good. I've used that.
We used Riverside in the past. It had some timing issues with some things. A really good product out there is cleanfeed.net. Check that out. Really, really high quality audio algorithm, isolated tracks, really low cost. It's probably what we found for our podcast is probably the highest quality audio recording we can get for cloud. And then we'll marry that and use StreamYard on top of it for video.
All right. I think we're over on time. Marcella, are you gonna cut us off here?
Thanks everyone so much for joining us today. The recording of this webinar will be available on avixa.org/webinars, and your 1RU credit will appear on your transcript in the next week. For questions, email webinars@avixa.org. A huge thank you to David and guests for providing insights into how you can design AV solutions to meet budget and time restrictions, but still accomplish the goals of the client. Join us for our next Content Production and Streaming Power Hour on October 18th. The topic is Harness the Power of Multicast. Learn about the magic of multicast as our expert panelists discuss how modern-day producers and IT teams are creating more efficient content distribution workflows that support campus-wide to worldwide deployments. To register, go to avixa.org/webinars. And please join our online community exchange to find more resources and networking on content production and streaming. Thank you, everyone. This is a fabulous webinar. I hope everyone has a great day.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.